What if reality isn't as solid as we believe? Somewhere in the quiet suburbs of Salem, Oregon, a house breathes in two different centuries. By day, it's home to Mark and Linda Jameson and their two teenage kids. By night, on nights no one can predict, it becomes something else entirely, something impossible. The house slips, silently, into another version of itself, a mirror of what was and what might still be. This other version belongs to the Morrisons, a family that perished in a tragic car crash back in 1987. But when the veil thins, they're back, walking hallways, cooking dinner, living lives never cut short. Neighbors first noticed strange lights in the windows during times when the Jamesons were away. Police found the home untouched by intrusion but oddly warm, with faint smells of fresh cooking. Television sets flickered with shows long off the air. Beds looked slept in. Nothing made sense. So the Jamesons installed cameras. What they caught defied explanation. Footage revealed two families, the Jamesons and the Morrisons, existing in the same space but in different frequencies of time. The Morrisons looked older than the photographs kept by their surviving relatives would suggest. As if in another dimension they had never died. As if they had simply kept living, growing older, raising their children into adults, children who now return to visit, bringing their own. Quantum physicist Dr. Elena Vasquez gave it a name: dimensional bleeding, a term for what happens when parallel timelines slip through the cracks. According to her data, these bleeds last mere hours, but show evidence of a complete, uninterrupted life in an alternate timeline, one where a tragic accident never happened. It's not just images. The sounds bleed through, too. Conversations in the Morrison kitchen have been recorded, full of references to smartphones, elections, and world events decades beyond their supposed deaths, as if our world leaks into theirs, and theirs into ours. And this isn't an isolated anomaly. Researchers have found similar phenomena in homes marked by sudden loss, places where trauma has torn the fabric of possibility. Like echoes rebounding through time, these realities overlap in brief, quiet collisions. But here's what's most chilling. The Morrison family appears to be aware, on some level, that something isn't quite right. They glance toward unseen presences. They pause mid-conversation as if sensing eyes upon them. One daughter, now grown, once looked directly into the camera with an expression that can only be called recognition. So what does it mean when death itself is not the final curtain, but merely one variation in a branching tree of realities? The Jameson house suggests that what we call the past might not be behind us at all. It might be beside us. Living, breathing, aging, just out of view. And it leaves us with an unsettling question. If other versions of us exist, living different choices, surviving tragedies that defined us, how thin is the wall between their world and ours? Perhaps our memories aren't just echoes. Perhaps they are messages from lives we almost lived. It starts with a path beneath ancient trees. In the Olympic National Forest of Washington State, there's a hiking trail that doesn't follow the ordinary rhythm of time. Here, under the moss-draped canopy, the forest whispers secrets from tomorrow. Since the mid-1990s, hikers have emerged from this trail shaken, not from physical exhaustion, but from the quiet impossibility of what they experienced. They speak of meeting themselves, future versions walking toward them on the same trail, dressed differently, speaking with foreknowledge that shouldn't exist. One such account comes from Dr. Michael Chen. In the summer of 2008, he met a man who looked uncannily like him, older and more weathered. The stranger warned him about a rock slide that would occur just hours ahead on the trail. Michael took an alternate route. Hours later, the path he had meant to take was impassable, buried under stone. It happened exactly as he'd been told. The rangers, skeptical at first, began to track these encounters. Over 200 cases have been documented. Future selves offering advice, revealing upcoming events, or simply exchanging quiet, knowing glances before vanishing down the trail. This isn't fantasy. GPS data, electromagnetic readings, and geological surveys all point to something real. The trail overlays a zone where natural crystal formations in the bedrock appear to warp the fabric of space-time. Here, moments don't stack neatly. They fold. They echo. Lisa Rodriguez, a photographer, encountered not just herself, but strangers who claimed they'd be friends of hers later. A year later, every face she'd met became familiar. Every name became real. She joined a hiking club and found them all waiting for her, unaware of the meeting she remembered vividly. What's even more surreal is that it's not just people that shift. The forest itself seems to leap ahead. Trees appear fully grown in places where young saplings once stood. Ranger stations blink into view, then vanish. Trails appear, then dissolve. Even future storm damage has been observed, then later verified when the storms arrive, right on schedule. Dr. Sarah Kim's research team calls this place a future echo zone, a region where time doesn't flow, it harmonizes. And like a song played in a canyon, certain notes return, clearer and wiser than before. But the implications reach beyond this forest. If future selves can reach back, what are they trying to tell us? Are these glimpses warnings, reassurances, or something else entirely? And how much of the future is fixed if those who live it can still change our path? Perhaps the forest offers more than just scenery. Perhaps it offers a gentle reminder that time, like the trail itself, isn't always linear. That who we are tomorrow may already be walking beside us today, leaving footprints on a path we haven't yet taken. In the quiet hush of moss and fog, a question lingers like the scent of cedar. If you met the person you'll become, would you listen? It begins with a city disappearing into the past. In the heart of Prague, beneath its ornate spires and cobbled squares, something extraordinary happens, though never by schedule or design. Entire city blocks vanish from the modern age and reappear as they stood nearly 7 centuries ago. Tourists have described the experience as stepping into a dream. Stone streets worn by centuries of footsteps, taverns lit by firelight, the voices of merchants speaking a dialect untouched by modern tongues. At first, many assume it's a historical reenactment, but then they notice the smells: wood smoke, fresh bread, the feel of the stone, the unmistakable sense that this isn't theater. This is real. The first recorded incident came in 1995 when an American tourist, Margaret Fleming, wandered into what she thought was a medieval fair. What she found was no fair at all. Her photos, taken with a film camera, revealed structures that architectural historians confirmed hadn't existed for hundreds of years. And yet, in that moment, they were as real and solid as the phone booths and trams just a block away. Security footage from modern businesses around the Old Town Square shows buildings fading like breath on glass. New facades dissolve into their ancestral forms. Modern windows yield to stained glass. Asphalt gives way to stone. The transition moves like a tide, predictable only in its circular spread and complete transformation. Dr. Pavel Novus from Charles University has spent years documenting these overlays. His conclusion is as bold as it is unsettling. This isn't time travel. It's dimensional convergence. A perfect overlay of Prague's 14th century self, complete with people, shops, and daily life, emerging not from memory, but from a parallel reality where the medieval world never ended. Tests confirm it. Goods purchased during the shift contain materials and chemical compositions authentic to the period. Dialects match exactly with surviving manuscripts. Census data aligns with the names and occupations of the people encountered. And when it ends as softly as it began. The buildings fade. The language slips back to Czech. Tourists and citizens alike find themselves dazed, standing once again in the 21st century. Only the faint scent of ash and beeswax lingers like a perfume from another life. What causes the overlay remains unknown, but patterns have emerged. The events often occur during overcast days when electromagnetic activity aligns with ancient weather records, as if the very atmosphere remembers. For those who witness it, the effect is profound. They don't describe it as frightening, they describe it as humbling. A window into the fact that the past may not be behind us, but layered beneath us, waiting. If time is a structure, what if certain places are its hinges? What if the past isn't gone, but simply folded away, like pages in a book we can still read, if we learn how to turn them? In the shifting streets of Prague, one truth echoes. History is not silent. It speaks in stone, in shadow, and sometimes, if we're lucky, it speaks to us face to face. It started with a street that shouldn't exist. In Duluth, Minnesota, the residents of a quiet northern town sometimes wake up in a place that's almost, but not quite, their own. It happens without warning. Streets change names. Buildings appear where parking lots used to be. And the people walking those streets? Some are strangers with familiar faces. Others are long-lost neighbors who, by all accounts, never made it past a century-old fire. The first sign came in 2001 when Frank Morrison visited his old childhood neighborhood, only to find it intact. Streets he knew had been destroyed in the 1918 Cloquet fire were now bustling with life. Homes stood proud, their paint sun-faded, their windows aged but never rebuilt. They'd never burned. Historians confirmed it. These buildings bore no marks of restoration. They had evolved naturally, aging over decades that, in our timeline, had never occurred. And it wasn't just architecture. Businesses long erased were thriving. Families thought lost had deep roots in this alternate version of the city. Photographs taken during these dimensional episodes show Duluth with a different trajectory, one where the fire never happened and the city grew dense, prosperous, and curiously familiar. Dr. Rebecca Foster, an urban planner, charted over 300 structures in the alternate city that don't exist in our reality. Not one of them felt like fantasy. Every design followed a logic of time and need, as if shaped by hands that never paused for tragedy. Residents describe it as slipping into a version of Duluth that grew up without scars, a version that feels kinder, fuller, more alive. Children play on streets that no longer exist in our world. Adults walk through shops their grandparents once dreamed of rebuilding. Some even report conversations with alternate versions of themselves, people who made different choices, yet arrived at the same doorstep. These events usually last between 12 and 36 hours before reality quietly resets. People return to the familiar, their minds buzzing with a sense of loss, or maybe awe, and yet souvenirs remain. A book bought in a shop that never existed. A coin from a currency that matches no mint. Objects that resist all attempts at explanation, except one. The trauma of history may leave scars not only in our minds, but in the fabric of space itself. Scars where timelines split, where what was collides with what could have been, where memory is not merely personal, but dimensional. In Duluth, the tragedy of 1918 burned more than buildings. It reshaped possibility. But when the veil thins, the city reminds us, the past has branches. And somewhere out there, our unlived lives are still unfolding, uninterrupted. So we must ask, if a different version of your life existed, untouched by disaster, would you visit it? Or would it visit you? And if you stood in the home you never had, on the street you never walked, would you feel like a stranger? Or like someone finally coming home? It begins with a stream that flows uphill. Deep within Glacier National Park in Montana, tucked away from marked trails and park maps, lies a patch of wilderness where reality turns itself inside out. Here, the laws of physics do not apply, not as we know them. Gravity is reversed. Heat moves toward cold. Fire chills the air, and water runs toward the sky. This isn't a metaphor. The anomaly was first documented by park ranger Tom Bradley in 2006. He stood dumbfounded, watching a creek climb a hill with steady, unwavering force, upward, not down. That moment opened the door to what is now known as the backwards physics zone. Roughly 200 meters across, this area operates as if pulled from an entirely different set of universal rules. Objects fall upward. Visitors must tether themselves or risk drifting off the ground. Flames radiate cold. Ice sizzles with heat. Even time bends, not in speed but in direction, cause trailing effect like a shadow cast before its source. Dr. Lisa Chang, a physicist from MIT, spent months studying the zone. Her findings defied every expectation. Dropped tools flew toward the treetops. Batteries recharged themselves, broken glass reassembled, shards lifting from the dirt to form whole windows again. The boundaries are razor sharp. Step beyond them, and the world reverts to normal. But inside, everything runs in reverse, governed by laws we don't yet understand, or perhaps laws we were never meant to encounter. Most staggering is the evidence of decreasing entropy. In this space, disorder doesn't increase, it unwinds. Things heal, systems organize themselves. It's a place where time, if not outright reversing, moves against the current. Theories abound. Some believe it's a rupture, where our dimension brushes against one with opposite polarity, a universe where the arrow of time points the other way, and physical forces follow unfamiliar scripts. Others suspect it's always been there, a natural fold in the tapestry of existence, like a knot in wood that resists the grain. The Blackfeet Nation has older stories. Elders speak of a place where the world turns inside out, a threshold into the upside down, where spirits walk backwards and truths reveal themselves in reverse, and their ancestors warned not to linger. And now, researchers are discovering the zone is growing, slowly, by about 1 meter a year. A quiet expansion, as if that inverted world is bleeding further into our own. Some scientists are intrigued. Military and aerospace agencies whisper of propulsion potential, of energy flows that rewrite what's possible. But those who've stood in the zone, who've felt the cold fire, and seen rocks drift skyward, speak with more caution than excitement. Because this place doesn't just reverse physics, it reverses intuition. It challenges what we believe to be foundational, turning certainty into suggestion. So what happens if it keeps expanding? What if our reality, so long thought stable, is only one of many possible expressions, and not even the dominant one? In the end, the backwards physics zone may not be an invasion. It may be a revelation, a reminder that the laws we live by are local, and the universe is vast. It begins with a coin toss, and ends with a town defying probability itself. In Milfield, Ohio, chance has forgotten how to behave. Here, luck isn't a matter of odds, it's a matter of timing. And sometimes, during strange stretches of time the locals call luck storms, the impossible becomes routine. The first scientific eyes turned toward Milfield in 2004 when statistician Dr. Robert Kim investigated a flood of anomalies. 17 lottery wins in 1 week. Lost family members reunited after decades. Couples meeting under absurdly unlikely circumstances, over and over again. At first, it seemed like fiction, but then it kept happening. During these episodes, randomness itself breaks down. Flip a coin and it lands on its edge. Shuffle a deck and the cards come out in perfect sequence. Dice roll your birthday, over and over. These aren't just lucky streaks. They're distortions. Patterns where none should be. Sequences that suggest not chance, but choreography. Dr. Kim's team recorded one luck storm in real time. Card decks sorted themselves into mathematically significant orders. Genetic samples revealed spontaneous mutations, over 10,000 times the norm. But instead of illness or error, the mutations enhanced function. Vision sharpened. Chronic conditions vanished, as if chance itself had chosen to heal rather than harm. Even more bizarre, these distortions often foreshadow future events. Coincidences become prophecies. A book bought during a luck storm might contain a passage mirroring a decision you'll face days later. A child stumbles on a photograph of someone they haven't met yet. Medical researcher Dr. Sarah Wilson studied these patterns and found that during the storms, probability operates by a new set of rules. It's as if another universe, one where rare events are normal, is bleeding through. An inverse probability dimension reshaping the roll of the dice. Atmospheric readings during these events show unique electromagnetic signatures, aligning with complex mathematical sequences. Fibonacci spirals, golden ratios, perfect primes. Geometry and chance dancing in a rhythm we've never fully understood. Locals have adapted. Some carry journals of unlikely events, reading them like weather forecasts. Others embrace intuition over logic, knowing that during these storms, following a hunch might lead to destiny, while planning could lead to dead ends. Children here grow up differently. They're taught that luck isn't luck. It's a language, a whisper from another reality. And if you listen closely, it might tell you something true. What does it mean when randomness becomes readable? When probability itself, one of the most fundamental forces of uncertainty, becomes a message. Milfield suggests that chaos isn't always chaotic, that in some dimensions, order and disorder trade places. And when those dimensions touch ours, reality itself becomes suggestible. So if luck isn't random, what is it? A glitch? A gift? A signal? Perhaps chance is more than mere odds. Perhaps it's memory of other paths we almost lived. And during these rare alignments, the universe remembers and shows us what else we could become. When everything becomes possible, what do we choose? And more importantly, who or what is watching us roll the dice? It started with a heartbeat in the walls. In downtown Seattle, maintenance workers at the Columbia Center reported something strange. The HVAC system was responding to moods. Not settings, moods. Warmth followed comfort. Cool air accompanied anxiety. Lights dimmed to soothe unease. The building, it seemed, was listening. Soon, engineers discovered more anomalies. Elevator cars moved before buttons were pressed. Walls pulsed faintly, as if breathing. Security footage revealed subtle shifts. Floor panels expanding and contracting like muscle, lighting shifting like pupils, adjusting to emotion. This was no technical malfunction. It was the beginning of what scientists now call living architecture. Dr. Amanda Foster, a biomechanical engineer, led the investigation. What she found was astonishing. Buildings that were not merely responsive, but alive. Steel girders showed vascular structures under thermal imaging. Concrete revealed neural pathways. Glass surfaces functioned like semi-permeable membranes, reacting to humidity, light, and even human proximity. The transformation wasn't superficial. Structures exhibited metabolism, self-repair, memory, and mood. Some buildings became cheerful on sunny days. Others turned sluggish during storms. Occupants described feeling welcomed or at times shut out by their buildings, depending on their emotional states. Over time, regular inhabitants formed relationships with these places. The buildings responded to familiar people with more nuance, adjusting environment to their comfort without any prompts. Independent engineering firms confirmed it. The materials themselves had changed. Steel behaved like bone, concrete like cartilage, wires like nerves. And yet the original blueprints had not accounted for any of this. The buildings had evolved, or perhaps absorbed something. Dr. Foster proposed a theory, a dimensional bleed from a reality where architecture is not constructed but grown, where buildings are born, where design is biology. Evidence mounted. Newer buildings near the transformed structures began showing early signs: flexibility, minor self-repair, reactive surfaces, as if the phenomenon was contagious, as if contact with living architecture spread the transformation. Communication with the buildings remains elusive. There are no voices, no language, but there is dialogue, through temperature, through lighting, through the small acts of accommodation and resistance that speak volumes in silence. The implications are profound: sustainability, energy use, environmental harmony, all reimagined through sentient space. But deeper questions arise. If these structures are alive, do they feel? Do they dream? And if so, about what? The presence of living architecture shifts our understanding of shelter. No longer passive, our environments become participants in our lives, observers, companions, perhaps even mirrors of our internal world. And if these buildings have memory, what will they remember of us? Perhaps the walls do more than listen. Perhaps they learn. And in the quiet of hallways where concrete breathes and windows blink with awareness, a new kind of question is forming, one made not of blueprints, but of being. What if the places we build are beginning to build us? It begins with a room that listens. At Stanford Research Institute, scientists stumbled upon a laboratory unlike any other. Within its walls, emotions weren't just felt. They were measured, observed, and felt back. Joy, anger, fear, sadness, they had consequences beyond the mind. Here, feelings could shift the physical world. Dr. Patricia Wong first noticed it in 2007. Equipment readings fluctuated unpredictably during her experiments. At first, she assumed human error. But soon, patterns emerged. Anger raised local temperatures. Sadness added weight to objects. Fear disrupted electronics. And positive emotions, love, joy, wonder, produced opposite, stabilizing effects. Over 2,000 experiments later, the evidence was undeniable. Emotions acted as a force, measurable and repeatable. Temperature, gravity, atomic structure, all sensitive to the invisible field of human feeling. A fifth force, perhaps, emerging in a space contaminated by dimensional overlap. Teams working together discovered even more. Collective emotion amplified the effect. Groups in sync could levitate objects, alter the rate of radioactive decay, influence quantum measurement outcomes. Thoughts became matter, in a very real sense. The laboratory seemed to exist at the intersection of realities, one governed by consciousness itself, where mind was not separate from world, but a sculptor of it. Repeated exposure altered the researchers themselves. They became sensitive to subtle changes in each other's emotional states. Neural pathways adapted. Mental discipline became a survival skill. Unchecked rage could fry circuits or warp equipment. Careful focus could bend metal or even lift it. Security protocols reflected the danger. Extreme psychological states could cause localized gravitational anomalies. Fires could ignite without fuel. Machines would behave contrary to expectation. The mind was, for a time, indistinguishable from the material environment it inhabited. The phenomenon suggests that somewhere, in a neighboring dimension, consciousness is a fundamental law of nature, just as gravity or electromagnetism is here. That human feeling might not only influence, but dictate physical reality. And as the boundaries between dimensions thin, our own emotional states might shape more than mood. They might shape matter. Entire objects, even outcomes, bending to the sway of thought. Step inside this laboratory, and one realizes that the heart is a tool as potent as any machine. That empathy, joy, sorrow, they are not just human experiences, but instruments of reality itself. The question that lingers long after the machines stop humming is simple and terrifying. If we can shape matter with emotion, what will the world look like when all of us are in alignment or at odds? It begins with the clock, and ends with neighbors aging at different speeds. On Maplewood Drive, a suburban street in Denver, time isn't uniform. Some houses pulse with months in mere days, while others crawl through years in what seems like hours. Families living side by side experience life in divergent tempos, as if each home is tuned to its own temporal frequency. The anomaly first drew attention in 2012. Observers noted the Johnson family aging rapidly, 5 years passing in the span of months, while the Millers, their neighbors, barely changed at all. At first, residents assumed exaggeration or tricks of perception. But detailed studies revealed a consistent truth. The temporal fields surrounding each home were measurably different. Dr. Angela Rodriguez, a temporal physicist at the University of Colorado, installed monitoring stations. Her data confirmed that some houses existed in accelerated time fields where minutes felt like hours. Others decelerated, compressing years into days. Weather conditions, storms, electromagnetic activity, atmospheric pressure appear to interact with the fields, thinning the veil between realities where time flows at divergent rates. Inside these temporal pockets, life continues normally. Children grow, adults work, routines persist, but outside the differences are jarring. Conversation becomes nearly impossible between families in mismatched time streams. A single interaction can feel stretched or fleeting depending on perspective. Friendships strain, birthdays misalign, milestones pass unseen. Biological processes adjust seamlessly. Fast-time residents age, eat, and sleep more rapidly but maintain health. Slow-time residents experience near stasis. But the psychological effects are subtle and profound. Some describe a sense of isolation, as if their lives are unfolding alongside a ghost world. Others report a strange serenity, observing the rush of the outside world while remaining untouched. Property values are unknowable. Houses in accelerated zones age, deteriorate, and sell or disappear entirely before assessments can be made. Insurance companies and emergency services struggle to respond. Temporal differentials render conventional planning futile. Life itself has become a variable rather than a constant. The Maplewood neighborhood illustrates an unsettling reality. Time may not be a universal river, but a series of streams, sometimes overlapping, sometimes diverging. It challenges assumptions about aging, experience, and the shared nature of existence. Neighbors are physically close, yet temporally distant. One's present is another's distant past or imminent future, and when you step back, the deeper question emerges. If our most fundamental measure, time itself, can vary between homes on the same street, what does that say about reality as a whole? Perhaps the most profound truth of Maplewood Drive is this: we may all live in parallel temporal streams, brushing against each other without knowing it, aging at different rates, experiencing the world in mismatched pulses, yet believing in a shared, linear life. And yet the street persists. Children play, leaves fall, seasons turn. Time continues, just not the way we expect. It begins with a thought and manifests in the air. At UC Berkeley, a research facility uncovered a room where human consciousness no longer stays inside the mind. Here, thoughts become visible, tangible, and interactive, floating forms that can be touched, moved, and even altered. What was once abstract takes shape, casting shadows, pressing against space, and occasionally colliding with matter itself. Dr. Michael Chen first noticed it in 2015. While conducting controlled cognitive experiments, he saw translucent geometric forms hovering above his workstation, reflections of his reasoning, crystallized in midair. Analytical thoughts appeared as sharp, precise patterns. Creative ideas flowed like liquid ribbons of color, constantly shifting. Emotions altered the atmosphere itself. Joy lightened the air, anger made it dense. These manifestations were more than visual. Mass, electromagnetic signatures, and physical interaction confirmed their reality, Some thoughts could support small objects or influence sensitive equipment. When multiple researchers concentrated on shared concepts, the forms merged, stabilizing into complex, persistent structures that remained for hours after the original thought had faded. Independent teams confirmed the phenomenon. The room behaves like a mirror dimension where mind and matter coexist in perfect symmetry. Brain imaging revealed heightened neural connectivity among participants. Skills in visualization and abstract reasoning improved outside the room, suggesting permanent cognitive enhancements. But the room is not without risk. Negative or chaotic thoughts can generate dangerous manifestations: sharp crystalline shapes, toxic atmospheric effects, interference with electronics. Protocols require strict mental discipline, ensuring the environment remains safe for study. The implications are profound. Here, consciousness is not just a product of neural activity. It is a force, a reality-shaping agent, able to create form and structure in a space where dimensional barriers are thin. In this mirror of thought, imagination and perception are no longer confined to the mind, but are measurable components of the world. For those who enter, the room is humbling. It forces recognition that reality is not purely external, not entirely objective. That thought itself can leave footprints in the physical world. That consciousness may have a universality, shaping the universe in ways we have only begun to perceive. And as the researchers manipulate these forms, they realize each mind is a brush, and the room is a canvas. But the canvas is not passive. It responds. It learns. It remembers. In the silence of floating forms and shifting shapes, one truth becomes clear: what we think may be as real as what we see. And if the mind can create matter, what limits remain? It begins with a house that exists in two realities, but the story has spread far beyond walls. From Salem to Seattle, from Montana to Ohio, a pattern emerges: places where our understanding of physics, time, and consciousness falters. Houses that breathe, streets that age differently, laboratories where emotions bend matter, forests where future selves walk beside us, cities that replace themselves with versions long gone or never realized. The anomalies are scattered, but the thread connecting them is unmistakable. Our world is porous. Each incident carries its own strangeness, its own rules. In some places, time flows backward or sideways. In others, probability reshapes itself into messages. Consciousness asserts itself as a measurable force. Objects and structures become alive. Yet the common denominator is awareness. Humans perceiving, responding, and recording these intrusions from alternate dimensions. The Jameson House shows that death is not always final. The Olympic Trail suggests that tomorrow can warn today. Prague whispers that history can fold back on itself. Milfield demonstrates that chance is a negotiable quantity, and Glacier Park proves that gravity is not a universal law, but a local agreement. Berkeley reminds us that thoughts can solidify into the tangible, and Seattle asks if the very buildings around us might be living, sensing, and learning. Researchers across disciplines have begun to notice correlations. Dimensional bleed occurs most frequently where trauma, emotional intensity, or structural uniqueness exists. Electromagnetic fluctuations, crystalline geology, and temporal stressors appear to thin the veils between realities. Perhaps these are not accidents, but natural intersections, points where the boundaries separating parallel worlds are weakest. The implications are staggering. If these phenomena are consistent and measurable, then our understanding of the universe as stable, isolated, and predictable is incomplete. Every corner of our reality may be intertwined with countless others, each governed by slightly different laws, histories, and relationships between matter and mind. And yet, amid the data, the anomalies retain an aesthetic, almost poetic resonance. They are not merely scientific curiosities, they are invitations to wonder, to question the assumptions of existence, To recognize that certainty may be a temporary construct, dissolving whenever the multiverse leans in close. The evidence converges on one undeniable truth: our universe is not alone. It lives alongside countless variations of itself, and sometimes, just sometimes, it reaches out, letting us glimpse the impossible. Standing at the edge of these observations, one must ask, if our reality is only a single layer among infinite others, how many are already bleeding through, unnoticed? How much of the life we think is ours is shared with or shadowed by another? And how different might the world be if the veils were ever fully lifted? It begins with a question scientists rarely ask aloud, not whether these events are real, but why they are happening now. For decades, anomalies like these were dismissed as folklore, misinterpretation, or coincidence. A strange house became a ghost story. A shifting city was written off as mass suggestion. A forest encounter was labeled stress or imagination. But as instruments improved and patterns emerged, denial became harder to sustain. What troubles researchers most is not the existence of dimensional overlap, but its apparent increase. The incidents are becoming more frequent, more precise, more interactive. Parallel realities are no longer brushing against ours in fleeting glimpses. They are lingering, exchanging information, leaving objects behind, responding to our presence. Some physicists propose that reality behaves like a membrane under tension. For most of cosmic history, it held firm. But pressure builds through technological saturation, electromagnetic noise, environmental instability, and perhaps something more subtle: collective human awareness. We observe more, measure more, question more, and in doing so, we may be stressing the very boundaries we are trying to understand. Others point to trauma, not individual, but civilizational. Wars, disasters, mass extinctions, rapid change. Events that create deep scars not only in memory, but in probability itself. These scars, they argue, may ripple outward, weakening the seams between what happened and what might have. There is also a quieter theory, one that suggests these overlaps have always existed. That houses have always held other lives, that forests have always whispered tomorrow, that cities have always remembered their former selves. The difference is not reality changing, but perception. We are finally listening. The people who experience these events rarely describe fear. More often, they speak of recognition, a sense that something long hidden has been revealed, that the world feels less mechanical, more alive, more forgiving of mystery. Perhaps that is the deeper function of dimensional leakage, not to shock us, but to soften us, to loosen our grip on certainty, to remind us that existence is wider than the stories we tell ourselves to feel safe. If reality is layered, then humility becomes a survival skill, curiosity becomes an ethical stance, and wonder becomes a form of intelligence. Standing before these convergences, we are no longer just observers, we are participants, whether we choose to be or not. And that leaves us facing a profound uncertainty. Are these other realities intruding upon us, or are they responding to an invitation we didn't know we were sending? It begins not with science, but with people. Amid all the data, the recordings, the charts, and theories, one truth remains quietly central. These dimensional moments are experienced by ordinary human beings, parents in their kitchens, hikers on familiar trails, neighbors waving across lawns, scientists standing alone in silent rooms. What lingers with them is not fear, but emotion. The Jamesons do not speak of terror when their house overlaps with another life. They speak of grief, tenderness, and a strange comfort, knowing that somewhere the Morrison family never lost each other. That love, in some form, endured. Hikers who meet their future selves often describe relief, a calm certainty, not because the future is known, but because it feels reachable, malleable, human. Visitors to medieval Prague report a quiet reverence, not excitement, but humility, the realization that history was once lived by people just as complex, hopeful, and uncertain as we are now. In Duluth, some residents grieve the version of their city that never was, while others feel inspired, reminded that catastrophe is not destiny and that different outcomes are always possible, even if only somewhere else. Across all these experiences, a pattern emerges. Dimensional overlap does not strip meaning from life. It deepens it. If multiple versions of reality exist, then our choices still matter, perhaps even more. They are not erased by other possibilities. They are distinguished by them. Each decision becomes one thread among many, precious because it is ours. And if consciousness can shape matter, if emotion can bend physics, then responsibility follows wonder. How we think, feel, and act may ripple further than we imagine, across boundaries we cannot see. Some researchers now argue that the most dangerous response to these discoveries is not panic, but arrogance, the belief that we can control or exploit what we barely understand. History offers enough cautionary tales about power pursued without wisdom. Instead, they suggest a different posture, attentiveness, respect, listening. Because these other realities, whatever they are, do not appear hostile, they do not invade, they reveal. Gently, briefly, as if testing whether we are ready to notice them without trying to dominate them. Perhaps the true boundary is not between dimensions, but between curiosity and fear, between humility and control. And perhaps the future of our reality depends less on what these other worlds are, and more on who we choose to be when we encounter them. If we are not alone in existence, then empathy may be our most advanced technology, and understanding, our greatest frontier. It begins with a question that cannot be ignored. What is reality, truly? From houses that harbor parallel lives to forests that echo tomorrow. From cities folding into history to neighborhoods where time flows at different speeds. From probability storms to living architecture, emotion-altering laboratories, and spaces where thought manifests as matter, the evidence is clear. Our universe is not isolated. It is interwoven with countless others, each governed by its own rules, histories, and possibilities. These anomalies are not accidents. They are signals, windows into the immense multiverse in which we exist. And they remind us that every choice, every feeling, every observation may resonate beyond the narrow boundaries we imagine. Perhaps the most human lesson is this: reality is fragile and permeable, but it is also responsive. It listens. It folds back upon itself. It offers glimpses of what was, what could be, and what might come. We are not merely observers. We are participants. Each heartbeat, each thought, each decision sends ripples through the layers of existence. Every act of curiosity, compassion, and awareness extends across the threads that connect us to other worlds. And yet, for all the science, the evidence, and the measured phenomena, the ultimate question remains profoundly personal. If we know that countless versions of reality exist alongside ours, each playing out the infinite possibilities of life, how shall we choose to live this one? In that space between knowledge and mystery, between observation and experience, we confront our truest responsibility: to act with integrity, to notice with care, to wonder without fear. For the universe is not merely what we see. It is what we feel, what we imagine, and what we create together. And in the delicate dance of dimensions, in the quiet leaks of time and possibility, we may finally understand that reality is not something to possess or control. It is something to inhabit, with awareness, with humility, and with awe. Because our world, and all the worlds intertwined with it, are waiting for us to notice, waiting for us to engage, waiting for us to live.